Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Darren in the DR. Today, we're going to talk about power in the DR, electricity, and the frustrations and options that you might have and what have you. So, let's start it out with talking about what happens here in the DR. So, compared to North America in general, the electricity that you receive from the local provider is, let's just call it, sketchy at best sometimes, because the infrastructure that they have here is developing, and the power goes out quite frequently because the demand for the power is growing and they're having a hard time keeping up. It sometimes can be very frustrating, especially for somebody who would be working online. The power's going off, you're losing your internet, that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, for us, we're lucky enough to have alternates for it to allow us to have backups, and I'm going to explain those today to you and what options you might have. So if you're just living in a house or an apartment or whatever, and there is no backup, when the power goes out, the power goes out. You're in the dark until it comes back on. Sometimes that could be 5 minutes, sometimes it could be 5 hours, and quite honestly, the local provider will post it online, and it's almost daily as far as interruptions in power when they're doing maintenance to the grid. They're changing things to improve the infrastructure, and it's just something you have to learn to live with and be patient with down here. It's just one of those things living in the DR that you don't really think about until you live here, and then you're experiencing it. When we first moved here, we were in our home in Ocean Village, and at the end of the day we would go out all the time, and they have solar backup, but you would lose power, so our internet would go out and we'd be watching TV, and the next thing you know, we're in trouble, right? We have to reset everything and then start all over again. So we ended up buying a small little battery backup for our router or modem, and that gave us the ability to stay online. After we moved from SOV, we moved into a home in the hills, and it already had the bones. Like, there was an inverter system and a diesel generator as well that was there to allow us to, cover things. There are a lot of people that don't have those things, and they do sit in the dark, unfortunately. With an inverter system, let's start that off first. So it could be anywhere. You could be in an apartment or whatever, and there's a little box that mounts on the wall. It's probably 2 feet long by 12 inches high by 12 inches wide, and there'll be, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 8 batteries, depending on how long and how much you want to power and for how long you can actually have there to allow yourself to stay online and keep your power up when the power goes off. When the power's on, your inverter charges, and you've got the ability to run when it's off. Our particular inverter system that we have here has 4 big batteries, and it'll last us approximately 7 hours, and that'll keep our fridges running, all the fans in the house running, all the stuff that runs on 110 volts runs. Anything that runs on 220, which would be like your air conditioner or your pool pump, it doesn't run. So the pool shuts down and the air conditioners don't run. Well, we don't run the air conditioners, only in the evenings anyway when we sleep, so it really isn't a big deal that way. But if it ends up being for longer than 7 hours, we're lucky enough to have a generator. And generators can be from small to large, and from reasonably priced to very expensive. And those are 2 different options that you can explore. A lot of people just have an inverter, and that's what they use, and it works well. And the biggest thing is obviously keeping your fridge on and keeping your food chilled or frozen. Those are the big factors, obviously, because when you're living in the DR, you're not inside all the time, you're outside. And that's the whole point of being down here. So you're not really feeling it. It's more at nighttime and that kind of thing when you really need it. And obviously keeping your fridge cold and your food frozen. With the generators, they can start at, as low as a few $100s for a small generator that may run an hour or two to power your 110 and that kind of thing for you. Not having to have an inverter system, you can just have a generator set up to run your house and a certain amount of outlets or whatever. That's certainly an option. And they'll get right up into the thousands and thousands of dollars. You can start at $3,000 to $5,000, and you're going to have a small little diesel generator that'll run 6-7 hours or something like that will power everything in your house, and they're a great little tool to have. Getting into a bigger generator, you're looking at $18,000 to $20,000, but that will run everything in your house. but there's also a cost associated with that because it's not only maintenance and upkeep, it's your fuel. And it can be expensive, especially if you're down for several days. You're using your inverter system, and when your generator runs, your inverter system is charged, and you're fine, but you're using fuel to run your generator. You can be regular fuel, it can be diesel fuel, but it does get pricey after a certain amount of time. So that's something to consider as well. The other one that's an obvious one down here in the tropics is using solar. And solar is an excellent example of being able to do it in a cost-efficient manner. The initial price, depending on what you're looking for, can turn around and become very expensive depending on what your demands are, what you're looking for. To power an entire house, a 3-bedroom home with air conditioning and covering your pool and everything else, you're probably at $24,000 US to do that. You can do it as low as a few $1,000s and have panels set up on your roof of your home or in your yard if you've got a big enough property, and they'll power your fridge and your fans and everything, and you have batteries as well that the solar system charges that gives you the power that you need in order to support that. And solar is an excellent option. You can get to the point where you're completely off the grid and you're not using any power from the electrical provider, and it's virtually free, right? It really can be a really, really great thing. There are many, many different combinations of alternates and options that you can explore. It's just going to depend on what actually works for you at the end of the day. So looking at things in an optimistic way, I guess the way to look at it is this: you have to decide what you're going to need it for. And some people have to have air conditioning all the time, some people don't. For us, it's not a huge priority. In the evening it's nice, and we do run our generator in the evening if power's off when we sleep and stuff, because we want the air. But for some people that may not be an issue, and they're good with that. Keeping your fridge powered up and your food frozen and all that stuff is what's going to matter. At the end of the day, for everybody, there's going to be different options that you can explore, and obviously depending on your budget as well. But the biggest thing down here is to understand that the power does go out, and it'll go out sometimes several times a week, sometimes several times a day. It depends on where it is. And for the service provider that we have down here, they're doing their best. They're trying to improve the infrastructure, and again, the demand on things, especially in high season, you'll notice it stays on more frequently, longer periods of time, because it's tourist season. They don't want to interrupt the tourists, and it's understandable. When it's lower season, like summertime, it will go out more frequently because they're doing maintenance to the system. And at dinner time, you'll notice a draw on power and stuff, and you may lose your power or whatever because everybody's at home cooking, everybody's got their lights on, everybody's using the electricity, so there's more of a draw or a strain on the system. So it's just something that's a way of life down here, and we've come to expect it. There was a time, because we live in the hills, and we are literally at the end of the line, at the top of the hill almost, where the power went down, and we were without power for 10 days. And it was pricey using our generator and making sure that it stayed up and running, and then balancing it, running it, and shutting it off, and using our inverter and running that for 7 hours. But it's still, it's substantial as far as the fuel goes, especially for that length of time. And understand that that's a really rare situation where it's off that long. It was just one of those things. Most you'll probably see it as probably 6 hours, 8 hours at the most, if they're doing something major in maintenance or whatever, or if there's a big problem within the town. But you can, if there's any comfort in it, know that everybody else is going through the same thing. So exploring some of these options are certainly something that you might want to consider when you purchase a home down here, or a condo when you're moving into it. If it's in a gated community, you can ask yourself, does it have backup power? And yes, 99% of the gated communities will have some form of power, whether it's solar, whether it's generator, or a combination of both, and you'll be fine. In a gated community like that, in a condo situation, the worry's already taken away. You don't need to worry about that. But with a home, a villa, you want to make sure that you're covered there. And a lot of people have already done them, so when you're purchasing a home, most of the time, well, I won't say most of the time, but a lot of the time, there'll be some kind of a battery backup system within it. But if not, you have to consider that in your budget to know that there's issues with the power down here, and you may want to spend that money to make sure that you've got power backed up for yourself while you're staying at your villa. It's certainly something to consider, and a lot of people don't realize it before they come down here, but you know what? It's going to help you at the end of it. You're going to enjoy it, right? It's something that we couldn't live without now. We don't have solar at this point, but we may do it down the road. It's just a matter of what we're deciding to do as far as the size of the system and what we want to support with it. But we can end up being off the grid, which is, virtually cost-free as far as an electricity bill at the end of the day, which is what you want. You don't want to be spending all that money and then still having to fork out X number of dollars a month. The power can be expensive if you're using your airs a lot, your air conditionings. It's just like at home. You run your air, and air draws a lot of amperage. You're using more power, and it gets expensive. So, just realize that. So these options, even though you have to put some money up front, it's something to consider. And if you want to prioritize things as far as costs go, an inverter is probably going to be your cheapest solution. Small inverter to power a small condo or something like that. And even for a villa, an inverter with 4 batteries will give you 7 hours of backup power depending on the system that you go with. I have a gentleman that I know, you can always leave your comments at the bottom and ask for it, who does solar and inverter installations. He does ACs as well. And I'm happy to share his contact information with you if you're interested in a solar system or an inverter system. So inverters would be the first choice as far as cost efficient wise and practicality. A small backup generator is certainly an option as well. Your price tag goes up a little bit going in that direction. And then solar is probably around the same when it comes to generators. You just got to pick your what option works best for you, whether it's solar or a generator or a combination of both. But those are things to consider when you're living down here. And I hope that it's been helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them at the bottom of the page, and we will certainly answer them for you. I really appreciate you watching this, and I hope you've got some information out of this that's useful. If you do like it, please like and subscribe. It helps us in a big way, and we really appreciate you watching and taking the time to listen to me. So until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.